And good morning, everyone, and welcome to Close Up. I'm Josh McKelvin. Chances are you've probably heard of her. Let's face it, everyone's heard of her, but former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has been campaigning in New Hampshire to talk more with people about who she is and why she's running for president. This after her campaign reboot of sorts. In the official speech launching her presidency, she is back in the Granite State, and she's also my guest this morning. Madam Secretary, great to see you.
Nice to see you, Josh. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I want to tell you, I do appreciate you being here, but in the first couple of months of your campaign, you were criticized for more or less being in a bubble. Kind of in a protective shell. What was the initial role of those first couple of months?
Well, what I wanted to do was to try to have as many conversations as I possibly could with not only obviously voters, but people who had issues on their minds, small business owners, people who were concerned about mental health, people who had student loan debt and other kinds of problems. And I wanted to spend the first 2 months really doing that. I had a plan. There was no reboot or anything. It was my plan. It was pretty much what I did when I ran for the Senate in New York back in '99 and 2000, because I hadn't been in politics since I became Secretary of State. I had certainly followed closely what was happening in our country because of the Great Recession, but I wanted that touch and that feel that you could only get from sitting and talking and looking at somebody. So today, back in New Hampshire, I had a press avail with New Hampshire Press, National Press. We're going to be doing a lot of that going forward, but I feel like I want to be grounded in the day-to-day experiences of the people that I'm asking to vote for me.
The cynics, particularly in the media, though, said, you know what, this was a mechanism to avoid answering some of the tough questions that you'll be asked and criticized about during the campaign, not the least of which the Clinton Foundation, the assertion that you used your influence at the State Department in order to get foreign donations and speaking fees on the part of former President Bill Clinton.
I can tell you, Josh, I have no problem answering any question, whether it's that or any other. There's just no basis for that, obviously. We are proud of the work of the foundation. I think what my husband invented with the Clinton Foundation, the work it's done, saving lives around the world from HIV/AIDS, helping young kids in America get more fit, increasing food production on small farms in Africa, and so much more, merits the support of people around the world, and that's who has been coming forward to donate, as they do to any philanthropy. I think part of the interesting twist to this is most foundations, charities do not publish all of their contributors. The Clinton Foundation does, but I think if you were to look at all the great universities, all the great hospitals, they in our country take donations from everywhere. And there was certainly nothing about the work of the foundation that in any way was used to influence any decision I made at the State Department. I made those decisions based on what our policies were as I was fulfilling them on behalf of President Obama and what was in the interests and the security and in accordance with the values of our country.
Would you agree, though, that there's an appearance of a conflict, though? One example being Uranium One, the Canadian company, sold to Russia, something that required your approval as well. And then later, some of the players involved in that deal wound up paying former President Bill Clinton, your husband, obviously, a $500,000 speaking fee.
Well, I don't know if we have enough time in this interview to debunk all of the allegations that were made by people who are wielding the partisan axe, but there's no basis for any of that. The timing doesn't work. It happened in terms of the support for the foundation before I was Secretary of State. There were 9 government agencies who had to sign off on that deal. I was not personally involved because that wasn't something the Secretary of State did. I mean, literally, we could have a whole show debunking a lot of these really wild, inaccurate allegations. And I'm always amused because the allegation comes forward, and of course, it's your job. You're in the press. You got to say, hey, what's going on here? And the very people making them often say, well, we have no evidence, but if you take from point B and you connect it to point Z, maybe there's something going on. And in fact, there isn't. So
what do you say to a New Hampshire voter that perhaps is a supporter of yours but has taken a bit of pause when they hear these criticisms, questioning your ethics, questioning your believability?
Well, I say judge me on my whole record. And in fact, what people in New Hampshire talk to me about is the cost of childcare, about their student loans, about how they can start and grow a new business, about the kind of concerns they have about terrorism and the like. So that's what people talk to me about. And I think what voters know and what this campaign will show is that the most important questions that they have to ask and answer for themselves is who can fight for me and my family, our country, to put us on the strongest possible footing. I mean, I want to stand up there and say in this campaign, I'm proud of our country. I'm proud of all of our accomplishments. I'm grateful for people who have defended it and served in the military, just as I'm grateful for everybody who's made a contribution and done so much to give us the country we love. But every election's about the future. So let's ask ourselves, what are the challenges we face today and how are we going to meet them? And that's what people are interested in. And I trust the voters of New Hampshire. I'm going to let them make the decision. And I think when all the dust settles and the real concerns of the people of this state and across our country are heard, they're going to see that I'm somebody who will get up every single day. People have said a lot about me. They've called me a lot of names, but they've never called me quitter. And I will fight to achieve what I lay out in this campaign on behalf of the American people.
I want to get your opinion on a couple of things that are in the news, topical issues. One being the Trans-Pacific Partnership deal. Administration officials from the White House came out a little bit surprised this week that you didn't have the same kind of support that they felt that you would for this deal, which has obviously been derailed in Congress. Where do you fall on this?
Josh, what I have said from the very beginning, my goal for this is what I think the president's goal is, which is to protect American jobs, to create more jobs that are good middle-class jobs, and to be in line with our national security. I've said that from the beginning, but I've also said it's got to be the right deal. And when I was in the Senate, I voted for trade deals that I thought were good for America, and I voted against trade deals that I did not think were good for America. And I've said, look, this whole question about do you put it on a fast track or not, that's for the Congress to decide. That's a procedural matter that they have to make up their minds about. I will judge the agreement. But when it was stopped in the House because of Democratic opposition on Friday, I said, okay, let's take this as an opportunity. The president should talk to Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats who were not pro-trade or no trade. They were, hey, we need a better deal on this if we're going to support it, to give you fast track to push it through. And I'm urging the president and the White House and the people in Congress who I think have good ideas about how to make it better to try to see if they could use that leverage to bring that about. But I'm still going to judge the deal at the end of the day is whether I think it's good for America.
And on its face, you think it needs some work?
I do, because I think that the questions that were raised are ones that have to be answered. And even in my book that came out last summer, I remember, I said I'm worried about something called the investor-state dispute settlement provision. That's kind of a mouthful. But if a company thinks that they're not getting a fair deal under this trade agreement in Japan or in the United States, they want to set up a special tribunal to decide it. I don't like that. And I said I'm worried about that. And I think now it could be significantly altered to at least make it more transparent, more open, let people besides the corporations with the interests, maybe some environmental advocacy groups or health groups or local government groups be able to have their voices heard too. That's just one example, but I think there are some changes that could make it more acceptable, and I hope they try to do that.
Well, I also want to ask you about the hacking scandal involving millions of federal workers, government workers. I mean, do you consider that a case? The president stopped short of saying, pointing fingers and saying this is the Chinese government.
Yeah.
But from what you know about it, do you consider this a case of cyber warfare?
Well, I consider it cyber attack. There's a little bit of a difference here because I think our private sector has been attacked. We all know it. Insurance companies and Sony and others have been attacked by foreign interests. We think principally Chinese or Russian. They're the most advanced. They're the most aggressive in using these cyber tools to try to suck up information for commercial advantage or frankly intelligence and strategic advantage, which it sounds like the attack on the Office of Personnel Management was about. I think this is one of the biggest threats we face, and I am talking about it. I'm going to raise it in the campaign. I think you were in the Marines, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so we have to be prepared on every kind of defense, and we have to support our men and women in uniform, but we also have to understand that in the hands of either states that wish us ill or groups, be they terrorist groups or hacker groups out for money and personal gain, our infrastructure is at risk. This information taken from the federal government can be used to harass, maybe imprison people who our officials talk to get information if their names are part of the broad data that's collected for top secret clearance. It's a serious, serious threat.
So what kind of a approach does the Secretary of State need to take in something like this? Because he's more or less on the front lines of trying to navigate the diplomacy between what we think we know and what we can prove.
You're 100% right. The State Department was attacked at least every day, if not several times a day, while I was there. Many of those were repelled by the security protections that were in the system. But we know that there have been increasingly sophisticated attacks that are penetrating. In fact, I mean, the president's personal email was gone after in a cyber attack on the White House system. So we have to give this the highest priority. We have to do everything we can to work not only to protect government information, because obviously that's important, especially top secret information, intelligence information. We have to protect our businesses because some of these attacks are to gain commercial advantage. I know as Secretary of State, and I can't go into too much detail, but let me talk a little broadly here. We know that some of our defense contractors have been targeted to pull out the plans for the sophisticated weaponry that they are building for the American military. Wow. So we know there's reverse engineering being done, and we know in a more prosaic way, companies that are backed by governments, either directly or indirectly, are trying to seize advantage by getting competitive information from us.
Well, we're just about out of time, but last week you had your reboot, your relaunch, whatever you want to call it, and you said this is part of your plan. What can the voter plan on seeing differently with
Well, I think, as I said, I wanted to spend the first 30, 60 days, I spent 2 months, really kind of filling up my mind with the stories and the faces of people. Had another experience today with a young woman who, was telling me about her student debt problems and what could we do. I mean, I will see her face, I will remember her story. Then I wanted to have an official launch. We had what they call now a soft launch on the internet, a wonderful digital launch. But I wanted to go to a symbolic place, which I chose, the Four Freedoms Park on Roosevelt Island, in honor of President Roosevelt's incredible speech in 1941, to really lay out my agenda. Now, I will then, through the summer, be rolling out specific policies. I will tell you how I want to make college more affordable and help people who already have a lot of debt get out from under what is an oppressive burden on their future, and all the other policies that I'm talking about. I'll be doing more events like I just did at the Orchard to get some enthusiasm and energy going, but to give more people a chance to see me. I'll be doing town halls, I'll be doing policy speeches. It'll be just the full court press, and I'm really looking forward to being here in the summertime.
We'll see you often in New Hampshire.
You will see me as often as I can get here.
Madam Secretary, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Josh.